everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kendra and today I'm going to be doing my best books of 2019. I have about 20 books that I want to go through. None of these are in any particular order, and let me tell you, this was one of the hardest decisions I've had to make because I've read so many good books this year, or in 2019, and these are the ones that I narrowed it down to, so let's get started. And I want to go through these books in the order that I read them throughout the year, so they're in no particular order whatsoever. The first book I want to talk about is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Most people have read this book, and I know it's on a lot of people's favorites books. And this is about Monique. She is a reporter and she's asked to write a biography for Evelyn Hugo, and she's completely stunned because she is a nobody and Evelyn Hugo is a huge celebrity. And you go through all the different husbands of Evelyn Hugo and about her life throughout the book. So this book was probably one of the most beautiful books that I have read, and I loved how diverse and developed and well-driven this book was. And I love, while you're reading this, trying to figure out who her one true love was, and I just love this book so much. I cried so much at the end of this, and is just so good. If you have not picked up this book, I highly recommend you pick up this book. And also, you, just by the writing of this book, you would think that Evelyn Hugo is a real life person, and she definitely is not. And you just want to know more about her when you're done reading this book. And I mean, when you get that in a book, you know it's a good book. So love this book. I will probably definitely be rereading this book sometime in the future, but yeah, loved this book. The next book I have is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. This is a historical fiction World War II book, and I honestly have no idea why it took me so long to pick up this book. I think I knew that I was going to love it when I picked it up, and it definitely lived up to my expectations. So you follow two sisters throughout World War II, and the two sisters are so brave and courageous in two totally different ways, and I loved reading about their dynamics throughout the book, and I loved learning about all of the different war things that were going on in this time period in France at the time. And this was just an excellent historical fiction. I definitely was hooked from the very first page until the very last page. And the ending of this book, literally, I was in tears. It just so good. I've read Kristen Hanna for many years, and I love her writing so much, and I cannot wait to see what else she puts out. And I still need to read The Great Alone. I've heard very mixed things, but like I said, I love Kristen Hanna, so I definitely will be picking that one up soon, and hopefully she'll be coming out with a new book soon, and hopefully it's another historical fiction, because this was amazing. So after I read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, I knew I needed to read more books by Taylor Jenkins Reid, so then I picked up One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and love this book. This is an adult contemporary, and this is about a woman. She's married, and her husband gets into a helicopter crash and is never heard from again, and then she gets involved with an old crush from high school, and then years later, while she's engaged to this guy, her husband calls and says that he is alive and she must choose who to be with. So amazing book. I cried my freaking eyes out. I guess most of these books I cried my eyes out, and I think that's how you know that you are emotionally involved in a book and you're just attached to the characters. So love this book. I definitely want to read more books from this author. This was only my second book by this author, so I definitely want to pick up more books in 2020 by her, and hopefully I love more of her books. The next book I have is The Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker, and this is about Kala. She finds out that her dad has cancer and they've never had a really good relationship, but she decides that she should go see him and he lives in Alaska, and he owns a bush pilot company. So when she gets to Alaska, the pilot that comes and picks her up is one of the employees of her dad, and he's a complete jerk. And it's basically their love story. So this is an enemies to lovers, and this book, literally, I was crying my eyes out at the very end. Like, you know, there's this one element that's going to happen, and it just, oh my God. This book. I have no words. It was just amazing. If you have not picked this up, please pick this up. It is so, so good. And then also the sequel to this book is coming out in a couple months, and I am so excited to see where Kay Tucker is going to take these two characters and, you know more about them and what's going on in their future. So, love this book. Highly recommend. We'll probably be definitely rereading this book in the future as well. The next two books I want to talk about are in a series, and it's by Candy Steiner. It is What He Doesn't Know and What He Always Knew. And this is about Charlie and Cameron. Their marriage is on the rocks, and Charlie is a kindergarten teacher, I believe, and there is a new teacher that is starting, and the new teacher is actually someone that she used to date when she was in high school. And since her marriage is on the rocks, she kind of, hangs out with him, starts having feelings for him again, and she must choose who to be with. The first book leaves off on a cliffhanger, so you definitely need to read the second book, and you will not be disappointed when you read this duet. Oh, this book tore me up too. It's so good. I love Candy Steiner so much. She is one of my favorite romance authors, and I will read anything by her, and I'm so glad I picked up this duet because it was so amazing. The next book I want to talk about is The Girls at 17 Swan Street by Yara Zahib. I think that's how you say her last name. I'm not 100% sure, but this is about a woman, Anna. She has an eating disorder. She has anorexia, and she is seeking treatment at a facility to help overcome her anorexia. So this book was very, very powerful and very heart-wrenching. I found it very fascinating, the different treatments that she went through, like what all she had to eat and when she had to eat, and I found that very fascinating. And the one element that I loved in this book was her husband was there for her 100%. I'm pretty sure if she did not have him, I don't think she would have survived. So with her having an amazing support system of her husband, I thought that was absolutely amazing, and he was an amazing man, and this book was so good. It was just something different that I've never read before, and I'm really glad I read it because it's one of my favorite books of 2019. So if that's something you're interested in reading, I definitely highly recommend picking it up because it was so good. The next book I want to talk about is The Last Letter by Rebecca Yarros. This book is about a woman, Ella. Her brother is in the military and he is serving overseas, and she's been writing back and forth to him, and he thinks that she needs a pen pal. So she starts writing back and forth to Beckett, which is Ryan's best friend, her brother, and they start to really get to know each other. So Ryan ends up losing his life overseas, and this is not a spoiler, it's literally on the synopsis of the book. His last letter he sends to Beckett that he wants him to take care of Ella. So he comes home to help take care of her, and it is their romance. And this book literally had me ugly crying pretty much from the very beginning all the way to the very end. The ending of this book is definitely not what you expect at all, and oh my gosh, it is just so good. I cannot wait to read another book by this author. I know she's coming out with another military romance this year in 2020, and I cannot wait to read it. If it's even half as emotional as The Last Letter, then oh my gosh, so good. The next book I want to talk about is Long Shot by Kennedy Ryan, and this is about Iris. She is in a relationship with August, and one day when she is at a bar, she is talking to this guy, and they have like a connection, and then they just take their separate ways after the bar. And as time goes on, they start just thinking about each other and what if they were with one another. And that's pretty much all you really want to know about this. And this is a basketball romance, and this book is very, very brutal, and it's very raw and very, very hard to read at sometimes, but it was so good. I haven't read the next book in the series because this book literally broke me. I still think about it to this day, and I will definitely remember it for a very long time. So yeah, there's really not much else to say about this except that it is a very powerful book. The next book I want to talk about is The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren, and this is about a couple. They are at their wedding and everyone gets food poisoning except the maid of honor and the best man, and they absolutely hate each other. But since they're the only ones that didn't get sick, they go on the honeymoon of the married couple, and they go to Hawaii and they fall in love. So this is Enemies to Lovers. This is so fun. I laughed so much during this book. I love Enemies to Lovers, so I love that part of the book, and it being in Hawaii was a perfect summer read. So if you haven't read this, I highly recommend reading this in the summer. This was so good. I loved it, and I love this duo author, so I definitely want to read more from them. So loved it. If you haven't read it, you need to read it. The next two books are from a series. The first one is On the Rocks by Candy Steiner, and this is a small town forbidden romance, and this is about Ruby Grace. She is about to get married, and she goes to the local distillery to buy a barrel of whiskey for her fiance, and while she is there, she meets Noah, and they keep running into each other as time goes on, and she starts having an attraction for him, and they end up having a relationship. So loved their relationship so much. I love the small town aspect of the book, and I loved how it was set in a distillery. I found that very fascinating, and I really loved that about the book. So I really loved this one. And then also I'm going to put Neat by Candy Steiner, which is the second book in the Becker Brothers series, and I actually like this one a little bit more, and I read this one very recently, and it's about Logan. He works as a tour guide, and one day he gets a new employee, which is Mallory, and she is the owner's daughter, and their families do not get along whatsoever. They've been feuding for many, many years, and so he has to train her, and of course they both start getting attractions for each other, and it's their romance. And in this one, I loved Logan so much. He was such an amazing character. I felt like I could relate to him so much, and he was just amazing. Loved him so much, and I loved how Mallory stood up to her family, and yeah, their romance was absolutely adorable. So highly recommend this series if you love small town romances. The next one is a thriller. It is Lock Every Door by Riley Sagar, and this is actually the third book that I read of his in 2019. So I read all of his books in 2019, and this was my favorite of all of them. And this is about a woman. She gets a job as an apartment sitter, and really creepy things happen in this apartment. So loved this thriller so much. I loved how you didn't know if it was paranormal or what the heck was going on, and I loved all the twists and turns, and the ending of this book was so good. I did not see any of it coming at all, so If you haven't read this one yet, I highly recommend reading this one, and also his other 2 books are just as good. So definitely recommend this author a lot, and I cannot wait for his new book to come out in 2020. The next book I'm going to talk about is Eleanor and Gray by Brittany C. Cherry. This is another very emotional book from the very beginning all the way till the very end, and it's the relationship of Eleanor and Gray. It follows them being in high school all the way up to being adults, and they go through so much, and it takes them so long to finally be together, but their relationship is so pure and so beautiful, and this is an amazing book. I cannot wait to read more from this author if this is what she writes, because this was amazing, and this couple, love them so much. This book was absolutely amazing. Highly recommend this book if you love second chance romances. The next one I'm going to talk about is The Wives by Taryn Fisher. This is another adult thriller, and this is about a woman. She is married to this man that is also married to 2 other women, but one day she is doing the laundry and she finds like a receipt in one of his pockets, and then she starts getting really curious about one of the other wives. She goes and meets with her, and she has bruises, and then she starts questioning who her husband actually really is. And this book, I literally had no idea what the heck was going on. This book was such an intense ride from the very beginning into the very end. I loved everything about this book. This was such a mind F type of book, and I loved all the twists and turns. I did not see anything coming, and this was so good. I love Taryn Fisher. I read Bad Mommy a couple years ago. Loved it. I think the title has changed now. I don't remember what the new title is, but love that. So I definitely want to read more thriller books by this author because I think she has an amazing writing style. The next book I want to talk about is Rustic Hearts by Amber Kelly, and this is about Sophie. Her and her mother move away to New York because her mom and father are getting a divorce, and then after many years she gets a phone call from her aunt saying that her grandmother has passed away, and she goes back to her hometown to attend the funeral. And while she's there, one of the farmhands is really rude to her and does not like her at all, and it's their relationship. So I loved this book. It was enemies to lovers, a small town romance. Love both those tropes so much, and I loved the family dynamic in this book. I thought their relationship ended up being so sweet, and they had amazing chemistry, and this definitely left me in tears at the very end of the book. So highly recommend this small town romance series, and the second book comes out in January, and I cannot wait to read it. I will be reading it here in a couple weeks, so I cannot wait to get my hands on it. And the last book I want to talk about is Hate Notes by V. Keelan and Penelope Ward, and this is about Charlotte. She and her fiance have called off their wedding, so she goes to a consignment shop to sell off her wedding dress, and while she's there, she's browsing. She finds another wedding dress, and she sees like a little blue note sewn into the dress, and she gets curious, so she takes the dress home, and she's looking at this note, and she wants to find this guy who wrote the note. So she starts stalking him, and she finally gets to meet him, and he's a complete jerk. And then as time goes on, he ends up being her new boss. So this was so much fun. I love the banter between these two characters, and then their chemistry towards the end was absolutely amazing. And I loved that there was so much more to the book than just their relationship. There was just other stuff that was going on, and I love that because you get more of a backstory of the two characters. You really get more emotionally involved with them, and I just love that about characters in a romance book. So if you haven't read this one, I highly recommend it if you love enemies to lovers and an office romance. So loved it. Cannot wait to read more from this dual author as well. So those are all the books that were my favorites in 2019. Were any of these your favorites? Have you read any of these? Do you want to read any of these? If you haven't, let me know in the comments, and until then, I will see you in my next video. Bye!